When you hear Marcus Aurelius's Meditations, you probably think of some dusty old philosophy book, right? Well, you'd be wrong. It was never meant for us. It was a private journal, a training manual written by one of the most powerful men in history for himself. So, how did he do it? How did this man build an unshakable mind while his entire world was basically on fire?
And that's really the heart of it, isn't it? You have to remember, Marcus Aurelius wasn't writing from some quiet, comfy study. He was on the brutal front lines of a war. He was dealing with a plague that was literally tearing his empire apart, and he had to manage all the backstabbing politics of Rome. So how on earth did he keep it together and stay a good person through all of that?
Well, the secret wasn't in his armies or his title. It was in this daily habit of writing to himself. He was, in a very real way, forging his own mind, building this mental fortress to protect himself from all the chaos. Meditations wasn't a book he just read. It was a tool that he built. And a huge part of that tool, well, it's based on a surprisingly simple blueprint. He didn't waste time on abstract ideas. Instead, he got really practical and just actively studied the people around him to learn from their strengths. He's basically writing himself a note here, a reminder. When you're feeling down, you don't need some grand escape. You just have to look at the people you interact with every day. Notice their good qualities, their kindness, their discipline, their courage. For him, seeing virtue in action was the ultimate source of joy and motivation. He even turned this into a concrete exercise, something you could call a virtue ledger. It's so simple. First, you just identify a specific good quality in someone. Then you really think about it. What does that actually look like? How do they do it? And finally, you file that example away in your mind so it's ready to go when you need it. It's incredibly practical. In fact, the entire first book of Meditations is basically his own personal virtue ledger. He just goes down the list of the most important people in his life and breaks down the specific character traits, the building blocks, that he learned from each of them. Let's take a look at a few entries.
He starts right at home, with his grandfather, which just goes to show you these powerful lessons don't have to come from famous gurus. They're often right there in your own family.
And what did he learn? Meekness. Now, I know what you're thinking. That word sounds kind of weak to us today. But for Marcus, it was a sign of immense strength. It was the conscious choice to be gentle and to keep his anger in check. I mean, think about it. For a Roman emperor, a man with absolute power over life and death, choosing to be gentle, that's a radical act of self-control.
Next up is one of his most important mentors, the Stoic teacher Rusticus. This was the man who really put him on the path of philosophy, not as an academic subject, but as a way of life.
And just look at the kind of lessons he cherished. Rusticus taught him humility, this idea that his character always needed redress and cure, that it was a work in progress. He learned to avoid trying to sound smart for the sake of it, to write simply, to read carefully. And maybe most importantly, Rusticus was the one who introduced him to the writings of Epictetus, the former slave who became one of the greatest Stoic thinkers ever. And it wasn't all just about official teachers and family elders. He also learned from his friends. From Apollonius, he picked up a lesson that is just absolutely core to Stoicism.
Steadfastness, the ability to be the same person, to stay rational and calm no matter what life throws at you. And just look at the examples he uses. The sharpest pain, the grief of losing a child, a long illness. He saw in his friend that it was actually possible to hold on to your character even when you're facing the absolute worst that life can dish out.
So, after building up this incredible mental library of virtues he learned from other people, Marcus then turned his focus inward. He developed this daily routine, this powerful morning mindset, to prepare himself for the challenges he knew were coming. Every single morning, he would start with this exercise. He would deliberately imagine all the difficult, annoying, and just plain awful people he was probably going to run into that day. Now, this might sound super pessimistic, but it's actually a brilliant psychological trick. He was getting ahead of it, preparing his response so he wouldn't be caught off guard or get angry when it actually happened. And this slide just perfectly shows that mental shift. On one side, you've got their flaws. They're ignorant, they're envious, but then look at his planned response. First, he reminds himself, I cannot be hurt by them, because their bad behavior can't touch his inner character. That's all that matters. Then he reframes them as kinsmen, as part of the human family. And because of that, he tells himself, I cannot be angry with them. And finally, he concludes that since we're all born to work together, his job isn't to fight them, but to actually find a way to work with them. Incredible, right? So when you put it all together,
learning from others and then preparing your own mind, you start to see that this isn't just ancient history. It's a timeless template that's there for us to use.
See, he wasn't just writing down random thoughts. He was actively building a system for himself, a framework for resilience that was based on gratitude for the good in others and preparation for the challenges of the world. He proved that character isn't something you're just born with. It's something you build, day by day, choice by choice. And Meditations, that's the blueprint he left behind for us.
So really, the big takeaway here isn't just about understanding some ancient emperor. It's about taking his method and making it your own. He showed us that the handbook for a resilient mind is ours to write. So the only question left is, whose virtues are you going to add to your ledger today?